Okay, good morning. It's 10 o'clock and we're going to get started. And today we're going to talk about gators and a little bit about reptiles. But before we get started, Natalie has up this website. It's the online resource guide for Florida shellfish aquaculture. This is the website that my program, the University of Florida, maintains. And I'm just bringing it up because all of the presentations we've done this summer to introduce you to the various Florida aquaculture commodities are posted here along with the videos where you're talking and viewing the visiting farmer's farm. So what you do is you click on resources and scroll down. So yeah, so now you're going to then look at the different sessions. Yeah, shut the door. Thank you. Then you can look at the different sessions. So for each session, you're going to have a copy of the presentation that was given, the video as well, featuring, in this case, there's Brian from Pentair, but the various growers that participated, you'll see that video is posted, as well as the specific references that we had for each one of these sessions. And each reference either comes from a University of Florida fact sheet or a USDA Southern Regional Aquaculture Center fact sheet. So today, again, is all about alligators, and our farmer today is Alan Register. I'll give Natalie a minute to get caught up here. So first, the presentation was obtained through the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. We have been using quite a few of their presentations from their aquaculture education webpage. There's Alan. So I want to introduce you to Alan Register. Alan and his wife, it's a family-run both roadside attraction and gator farm in Palmdale down in Southwest Florida. So Alan farms alligators not only for the meat but also for the hide and other products. So he will be talking to you and introducing you to some of the videos provided. And also Alan can comment as Natalie goes through this presentation first. So we'll start with that.
Is this the point where I say good morning, or do I wait?
You can say good morning, of course.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes, so today we're going to be talking about alligator and reptile culture, and we'll actually be talking mostly about gator culture, but also a little bit about turtle culture here in Florida. So today is our last meeting. So we've had a bunch, we've talked about recirculating systems, mollusk shellfish culture, aquatic plants, food fish, and ornamental fish, and now gators. And so just a reminder, all that's found on the resource page that we just showed you as well. And then for today's presentation, we actually took this from the Aquaculture Science book that you guys have. And then it's also been a little bit modified with a PowerPoint presentation that was done by the Wildlife Ecology Program at UF. So it's a mixture of both of those. So the origin of the name alligator is actually very interesting. When the Spanish settled here near the Gulf Coast, they named it El Largato, and that actually means the lizard, because when you think about it, alligators look like really giant lizards. And then when the English settled here and they were listening to what the Spanish were calling them, they actually misheard them and started calling them lagato. And originally that transformed into what we now have as the alligator. The alligator is part of the order Crocodilia, so you might also see the American crocodile in that order. And sometimes you can confuse these species if you don't really know what you're looking for, what the different morphological or physical characteristics are of the gator and the alligator and the crocodile. But we do have both here in the US, and I have a picture of both of them. Do you guys have an idea? Are you sure? Why? The nose. So tell me, what exactly makes up an alligator nose? Flat, broader nose. All right. So you guys are right. Crocodiles have the narrow pointed snout. They have a light tan or brown coloration, and they actually possess the salt excreting glands. And I'll have a better picture that shows you what that looks like. But there are these black glands that allow them to excrete salt, and that's why they're able to be found in salt areas, saltwater environments.
Natalie, can you hold up for 1 second and go back to the photo of the crocodile?
Yes.
If you look inside the crocodile's mouth, another difference that by the time you find that out, it might be a little late, is that the crocodile does not have a tongue where an alligator does. So if you look inside of his mouth, it's just kind of a void in there. And
well, we already had one question for you, Alan. I'm sure it's in the presentation, but you can answer this right off the bat. So
okay.
Where do crocodiles originate from?
Well, the American crocodile are they're found in Central and South America primarily, and they're also found in the islands. There are some in Cuba, Jamaica. GatorRama does have the only breeding colony of American crocs in the country. In the United States, their range is about as far north as Fish Eating Creek, which is just north of us. So they are in the wild. There's about less than 2,000 of them in the wild. Back in 2010, 2011, when we had the freezes, they lost about, I think it was 14 or 15% of the wild population down in the Everglades. So they were taken off the endangered species list in 2007. So they're no longer on the endangered species list, but they are a species of special concern.
The students think that's very cool. For alligators, like you guys were saying, they have the broad rounded snout, the grayish black coloration, and they don't have salt excreting glands.
Well, obviously they have a tongue then.
Yes.
And a tongue, that's right. There you go.
I didn't know that.
That's a little known fact.
Yes, that is a very fun fact. For alligators, they have a low tolerance for salt water, so you'll see them in some saltwater locations, but they won't reside there for very long. And that's again because they lack that saltwater excreting gland. In the bottom photo, there's the crocodile, which is tolerant to that salt water, and those little black, that's the black coloration of the glands themselves. So that allows them to regulate how much salt is in their system, so they excrete that salt out, and that allows them to stay in these saltwater environments. For the habitat, the alligator can be found in wetlands, streams, ponds, lakes, and then you might even find them in canals. If you're in residential areas, you might find them in your residential ponds and even your pools. Typically, when you find them in pools, they're a lot smaller gators, and that's because they're usually trying to move out of locations where there's bigger, more aggressive alligators in that area. You'll also find large populations of gators in nutrient-rich areas like lakes and marshes. That's because they have all the nutrients there for their prey to feed on, and then they have plenty of prey to then eat. For the Alligator Range, you can find them from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And what's really interesting is through the Mississippi Delta, you might even be able to find some alligators working their way up into Arkansas and Oklahoma. A little bit of history about the American alligator is that in the 1800s, it was actually harvested for their hides. So we're looking at making leather belts, boots, exactly, fashion accessories. And in the 1950s and 1960s, they were widely harvested. So it was to the point that there was no regulations. They were being overexploited, and this actually reduced the alligator populations. So in 1967, the alligator was put on the endangered list throughout its range. As the population recovered, it was removed from the endangered species list in 1987, but they're still classified as a threatened species here in the state of Florida. Do you guys have any ideas why that might be, if they've bounced back? lost. So one of the reasonings is that we have the crocodile here, the saltwater crocodile in the southern portions of Florida. It's not found, it's more of a rare species found here in Florida. And because people aren't always able to tell the two species apart, that's why we have a closed hunting season, and you'll find them on the threatened list here in Florida, just because of the confusion people might have between the alligator and the crocodile.
Yeah, and one of the
How did they rebound so fast?
how did the alligators rebound so fast? There are 5 different programs that FWC has in the state of Florida. One of them, obviously, the farming program, have an alligator egg collection program. They have an alligator hatchling collection program, and the nuisance alligator program, and now they have a public hunt. And basically, all of those programs kind of dovetail together in order to bring the species back, because now it's a managed species instead of a, go and get them species. And by managing the species, it's given more value to the land, which also, and it gives more value to the land, and it also allows the landowners to, preserve the habitat for them instead of, filling it in and doing other things, whether they're farmers or whether they're just large landowners. And as in the last few years, just as an example, with the egg collection on private lands, the eggs now in the last 3 years have gone for between $40 and $60 per egg to the landowner. And then there's about another $6 to $8 per egg collection cost. And that's only happened in the last several years because of the influx from people outside of the state coming in wanting our resource. But the sustainability, the species has to be sustainable. And by having those programs in place, it is a very sustainable resource.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It does, thank you.
And what Natalie, I'm sorry, one other thing. The crocodile that you mentioned is a cutis, or an American crocodile. There is a crocodile because there's 23 different species of crocodiles. And there is a species, it's called a saltwater crocodile, or porosus, which are found in the southern hemisphere, mostly in Australia. So I know a lot of the locals and old timers, they'll refer to the American crocodile as a saltwater crocodile. And even though they will and can and do live in salt water, their real name is not a saltwater crocodile. So but it's very common, and I don't take offense to it.
Thank you. So here in Florida, we do have a random lottery for permits if you do want to go gator hunting. A little bit of history about alligator farms. So the first commercial alligator farm opened up here in Florida in 1891, actually in St. Augustine. And they had all different types of attractions, as you can see here. There was even a gator slide, so that's really quite interesting. You can see all the gators out basking. And this was a really hot spot for tourist attraction, as it is still today. Here in the U.S. alligator culture, we have 33 alligator farms. And so how many alligators are sold per year during the 2013 census was 314,000. That's a lot of gators. 600,000 hides were actually sold, and that produced 1.15 million pounds of meat, which came to $62 million in annual sales. So in Florida in 2013, there was 10 farms total. And then if we jump to 2015 and just look at Florida aquaculture, we had a sales revenue of $8 million, so $8.5 million. And this was an 80% value just from hide sales. And so when you think how many gators does it take to be hides, it actually came to a total of 115,000 feet of hide for leather. So that's a lot. 20% of that value came from meat sales as well. And that was 188,000 pounds of meat. So you can actually see that there's an increase in gator sales from 1977 all the way up to 2015. But in 2009, there was a dip in that, and that was because we were in an economic recession. So there wasn't as much of a demand for alligator meat and alligator hide as well.
What's up? 21, okay, we've already got a calculation. 21 miles of hide?
21 miles of hide is a, oh, that's a lot. 21.8 million of hide.
That's from here to Otter Creek.
Yeah, it's a lot of hide. Do you have
I've
anything
never,
to add, Alan?
yeah, I was going to say I've never really looked at it in terms of feet of alligator hides because as a farm we sell in belly centimeters from side to side in the middle part of the alligator, and some of these numbers can be misleading because you'll have a bulk of the hides that will get the most dollars, where I'm sorry, you'll get few hides that will get most dollars, and then the bulk of the hides don't get as much. The grading system over the years has become more and more difficult. I can remember back in 1986, 87, 88, when we first started out in the industry and started selling our first hides. They couldn't give us enough money for the hides because they just wanted access to the hides. And now, as time has gone on, they've gotten a little more sophisticated in their grading and also their measuring. And as with most commodities, we're the low man on the totem pole, and we're the ones that, even though there's that you look at the $8.5 million in hide sales, those will probably produce about $30 million worth of, or $40 million worth of products, or even more. For an example, you can take a 6-foot farm-raised alligator skin that will yield the farmer maybe $400, and that hide will produce approximately $3,000 to $4,000 worth of product. So, it's kind of misleading, because everybody thinks if you're an alligator farmer, you're rolling in the dough, but it's the guys that are making the products, and the other end is as with most commodities. So,
Thank you. So let's talk about love. Courtship. Courtship usually occurs in May to June. What's really interesting is that during courtship, the males and females are very tactile, so you'll actually see them using their noses and touching each other on their nose a lot. The males will also start to bellow, so they're calling females over. And when they are ready to mate, usually it occurs in deeper water. So in order to tell them apart, we have the female to the left here and the male to the right. And females grow to about 9 to 10 feet in size. Males can reach up to 16 feet in size. And if you're looking at weights, Alan, please correct me if I'm wrong, males can reach up to 1,000 pounds, I was reading. Is that true?
That's true. And the size, that as far as the length, the males max out at about 14 feet. And to see a 14-foot alligator would be very rare. The largest one on record in the state of Florida is 14 feet 3 inches. So, okay, did I lose you?
Oh, you're back.
All right, sorry about that.
You're fine.
The females max out at about 9 feet. Now, there are some areas that I've seen on the public water egg collection up in the Sanford area. Lake Jessup has some of the largest females that are 9 and 10 feet long that, they're sitting on protecting those nests, and they're just mean too. So, but that's right as far as the size. Most of the time though, when you see a 12 or 13-foot alligator in the wild, he's going to be skinny and maybe weigh about 700 or 800 pounds. But they can 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 pounds is not unusual for a well-established male alligator, especially at a park. If you come to our place, or if you go to St. Augustine or Gatorland, any of those places that have large alligators, they're very well fed. So you'll see them larger there than you'll see anywhere else.
How much do the females usually get to weigh?
Probably in the 300 to 400 pound range. Not too. They're not too
Pretty
big.
difference.
Yeah. But one of the things that happens in the mating process is that the females will not allow a male to mate with her unless he has the strength to push her underwater. So he'll use his head and push her head underwater. And if she can prevent him from doing that, she will just swim away and will not allow any mating to take place. So, you know, that kind of helps with the survival of the species. And, you know, they won't, you know, she doesn't want some weak guy coming and trying to mate with her.
Yeah. Let's see if this audio works. I'm hoping.
Trying to do the bellow?
Yeah, I don't think I can. It's not loading, but.
Okay, I can do it for you. I can do it verbally for you. See if I can
That
do
would
it.
be awesome, yeah.
What's up? Did you hear it?
That's really good.
And so what happens when they bellow, you see the picture on the bottom where the alligator has his head up and his tail up. It's a sign with the courtship, the male's kind of showing off. He's kind of like a peacock, showing off his feathers to see how big he is. And you'll see the water when he takes the water in, he'll just or takes the air in. I'm sorry. He'll kind of float to the top, and as he sinks down, the water will vibrate on the back, and it's a very low frequency. They think that the base frequency is somewhere around 50 hertz, which is something that we cannot hear. We had some researchers here from Boston University several years ago, and they did some research on Faraday's wave, and you know, finding the harmonics to see what the base frequency was, and it was very, very interesting research. So.
Is that what they mean by the alligator males dancing in the water? What that vibration is coming off?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it, Natalie. Yes.
Okay. So next comes the nest building, and so typically you can see this around June, July-ish, and basically the females are going to look for an area close to the bank, and that's because they are going to want to be able to protect their nest. So if they're in the bank, they can get away fast, they can scare off animals. And when they're starting to build their nest up, they actually can use their mouths to collect aquatic vegetation and push that up onto land. They'll use their arms to kind of scoop up a bigger patch. And their nest can be around, I know you've seen nests, so about 2 to 3 feet high and maybe 5 feet wide about. What do you say?
They vary just depending on the size and the age of the female. We've seen them as high as 4 feet tall and 6 feet at the base. They look like little miniature haystacks, but then sometimes you'll see them very small to the point where you don't even know if it's worth opening the nest up to see if there are eggs in there because it's so small. But the nesting, the way they build it is just incredible. It's very impressive. You see a huge nest and you see a little alligator on it, you think, how, it must have taken her weeks to build it, but they seem to do it in just a couple of nights.
So in that nest, they'll actually create a cavity. So there'll be a little bit of a depression. And when it's time for her to lay her eggs, she'll climb up onto the nest and position herself. And from what I read, she goes into a trance. And when she's in this trance, apparently you could go around her and she wouldn't even notice you. She's just so fixed on laying those eggs. And then once the eggs are laid, she'll cover them up in that vegetation to protect them. And so usually all the females in that area will lay all their eggs within that 2 weeks. So it's very synchronous. All the females will nest at the same time, just about. So again, nesting begins June, July, and when they deposit their eggs, they can deposit anywhere from 20 to 60 eggs, and they'll defend this nest. And then when it's time and the eggs start to actually hatch, you'll hear the the hatchlings or the baby gators actually start to grunt. They'll produce noise, and that's going to let the mama gator know it's time to uncover that nest from that vegetation. And then she'll actually pick them up and transfer them into the water if they're not able to move themselves to the water. Alan, do you have anything to add for that?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're doing a great job, Natalie, by the way.
Thank you.
No, I mean, I'm very impressed, I have to say. You know, they'll start chirping, and what happens is once one chirps, the other one will hear it, and then they'll start to chirp, and then they'll eventually pip out of the egg. And so the way they pip is they have an egg tooth. And when alligators are first hatched out, inside their mouth, they don't have any teeth on the inside of their mouth, but they do have an egg tooth that's on the outside of their snout on the very top. And when the baby's in there, he's moving his head back and forth until he pierces that inside membrane, and it allows the embryonic fluid to get on the harder shell and makes it a little bit softer and easier for him to pop his head out. Once they pop their head out, they may sit there for a couple of hours, but they'll be chirping, and it wakes up the brothers and sisters, and then eventually you'll have the whole clutch, and normally the whole clutch will be chirping. And normally what will happen is within a 24-hour period, all those babies should be hatched out. And like you said, in the wild, mama's going to come up there, and she will help them, and then she stays with them. The babies will stay in what they call pods for the first 8 or 9 months. Those of the ones that survive. Now, very few of them survive. There's a less than 2% survival rate up to 4 feet long. But so a lot of them get picked off by either raccoons or big birds or snakes, male alligators, largemouth bass, fish, whatever. So very few of them survive, but there's definitely safety in numbers there.
Thank you. Then we have alligator collection. And actually, Alan, do you want to describe this part? I know we have the video
Sure.
that will at the end as well.
Sure. One of the programs that I mentioned earlier is that the alligators or the Public Waters Alligator Egg Collection Program, which is a fantastic program for the farmers to have a resource to restock their farms each year. And what happens is the state gets paid $5 per egg, and then we have collection costs of anywhere from $6 to $8, and that includes renting helicopters, airboat drivers, and then just people to work the pontoon boat. And basically what we do is we'll go out, we have specific areas that we can collect. And then the areas that we collect, we can only collect a certain number of nests. So some of them are 50% collection rate. Some of them, they say 100%, but we now have to say all accessible nests because 100% is misleading because we can never collect 100%. Number one, they estimate that we miss about 21% of the nest, which, my personal opinion, I think that number is kind of high. I don't think we missed that many. But however, even if we do miss them, and the ones that we do see, we can't always get to them because of the vegetation or whatever's in the area that prevents us from getting there. So what we do is we use the helicopter, we spot the eggs or spot the nest. We radio down to the airboat guys. The airboat guys run to the nest, and they're running through some pretty thick stuff a lot of times. And then there's generally 2 people on the airboat. They'll collect. One person protects the guy collecting. They will. What they do is they mark the tops of those eggs. And the reason let me finish the story. And I'll go back to. And so then once they collect the eggs, they bring them back to the mother boat, or what we call the egg boat, which is a pontoon boat. And there the eggs are candled and counted, and all the data is taken for FWC, and then also for distribution purposes. But going back to the nest, before we even take an egg out of the nest, those eggs should be marked. The top of them should be marked as they lay in the nest. And the reason we do that is as the baby alligators being developed inside the egg, it floats up to the top, it attaches itself to the membrane on the inside of the egg that then becomes the life source for that baby alligator. If you turn the egg over, even 90 degrees, he could possibly detach from that shell, and it will cause him to drown, or it'll kill him. So we're very careful in handling the eggs. Once the eggs are candled, then at the end of the day, we have couriers that meet us at our boat ramps. They then take those eggs to a temporary storage facility, which then will be distributed within 6 or 7 days after collection. And they go to 35 farms, which are then hatched on their farms and raised for their meat and their hides. So it's a very good program, and I've been involved with it for 25 years now. I've been the coordinator for that program for 25 years, and we've come a long way in the last 25 years. But it's a great program.
I might have missed it, Alan, but primarily where geographically in Florida are these egg collections?
We're as far north as Tallahassee, so we'll collect in Lake Ammonia, Lake Miccosukee, and go all the way down to the water conservation areas in the Everglades. Obviously, Lake Okeechobee is a big lake for us, Lake George, Rodman Reservoir. We don't have anything over there close. Lake Panasoffkee is about as close to Cedar Key as we've gotten. We used to collect a couple lakes up around Gainesville, but this year we actually had a record year of collection. In the past, we would collect anywhere from 33 to 37,000 eggs statewide in public waters. In 2017, we retained 31,688 eggs, and this year we retained 49,912. So, and about 21,000 of those eggs came off the Lake Okeechobee. Wow. So it was a good year, which is kind of surprising because, as Natalie was talking about before, with the mama's building the nest, she'll start building that nest in June, and sometimes they'll have a sense of waters rising, and they're not going to build it in a place where the eggs are going to get flooded out, because then they'll all die. So what happens is, if they can anticipate the rising waters, they'll build up if they can, or in a higher ground. We had a lot of rain earlier in the year this year, which caused them to kind of move out and nest in new areas. But so it was a tremendous year in most areas. And one other thing I might add is that the alligators will nest in the same location year after year. I mean, within 10 feet most of the time.
Wow.
So
if a gator is maybe translocated to a different area, do they come back and try and find that area again to nest, or will they?
They will if it's but most cases they're not relocated anywhere. As far as the nuisance program, those alligators are harvested and sold for the meat and their hides. But if they get misplaced, and that's one of the things that we were concerned about this year on Lake Kissimmee, with Hurricane Irma came through, and it pushed a lot of the vegetation in a whole different part of the lake. And so there weren't the nests there that we had seen. However, I guess they just kind of went with the vegetation, because we found more nests in areas that we'd never seen before.
Oh.
So they will try to, but if there's no vegetation there for them to build the nest, then they'll move on and find another place.
Okay, thank you. So Alan, please chime in if I'm wrong about any of this, but it takes about 65 days for the eggs to incubate, and they're actually sex determined by temperature during their incubation period. So you're either going to have a nest that's 100% female if it's 87.8 degrees Fahrenheit and below, or 95 degrees and above. And then you'll end up with nests that are 100% male if you're in between the ranges of 90.5 and 92.3 or degrees Fahrenheit. And then sometimes you can actually have a mixed nest if they're found in between the ranges of the females and males.
Right.
Yes,
That's
like sea turtles.
Yeah, that's accurate. The only thing that I would add to that is that within a single nest, you're going to have varying temperature ranges due to the depth of the egg and the clutch. So if there's a lot of, because some nests are just in the wide open, and if the sun's beating down on them, the ones underneath are going to be a little bit cooler than the ones on top. So you'll get a mix of both male and female. On the farms, we incubate in single layers, and so we incubate to try to get more females than males. And
Why is that?
The reason we do that is because the ones that will not be harvested for meat and hides for whatever reason will be potentially used for brood stock in the future on the farm, or possibly to sell to other collectors or other zoos. And that they also, the females seem to grow a little bit faster for the first couple of years, which is what, as a farm, that's what we're looking for.
Okay. So the hatching success is around 50 to 90% at the farms themselves. As you were saying before, it could be as low as 2% in the wild. The smaller and weaker ones just can't compete with their larger siblings. And in culture, typically when they're put in tanks, it's a 2 foot by 2 foot tank, and when they're just hatchlings. And they're kept at a constant temperature just by pumping hot water into the system. And hatchlings produced can grow up to 4 feet in about 14 months. For the stocking,
Hold on a second. I gotta correct that. Go back.
okay.
So the hatch rate, or the success rate of the hatchlings on the farm, once they hatch out, we have more than a 90% hatch rate. Not hatch rate, a 90% survival rate once we get them started. So even the weaker ones will do better on a farm than in the wild, obviously, because we're able to keep them same size, and we keep the densities, where they need to be, so that there's not a lot of fighting and all that stuff. The tanks, different farmers have different methods, but most farms are using either a 32-foot diameter circular tank or a 16-foot diameter circular tank. Some will harvest in or raise in rectangular tanks, and they almost look like a chicken house, except for their ponds in there, and the water varies from as far as the depth goes, anywhere from 8 to 14, maybe 15 inches deep. And the way we're able to raise them fast, because an alligator grows on the average of 1 foot per year. So if you see a 6-foot alligator in the wild, he's going to be about 6, maybe 7 years old. Obviously, as they get older, once they get to that 7.5 foot range, their growth rates slow down considerably. So, if you see a 13-foot alligator, he's going to be much older than 13 years old. They're kind of like people; they stop growing up and they start growing out as we get older. But once I was going to talk about the heat. Like I said, their normal eating routines about once every 18 to 20 days. By boosting the water temperature up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, we can increase their growth rate. So we'll take an alligator hatchling that's 8 to 11 inches long when he's first hatched out, and we can get him to 5 feet long in 2 years. And the way we do that is we boost the water temperature to 90 degrees, and we can feed them every single day. And what we're feeding is right now is most farms are feeding a grain-based alligator food that's made commercially, and there's about 5 or 6 manufacturers out there that make that, and it's just a real high protein, low fat food. So I hope I didn't get too far ahead of the slide.
No, you're awesome. Thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. As you were saying, depending on the farm, size can change for pens and even tanks. Commonly used stocking is about 1 square foot per animal until they're about 2 foot in length, 3 square feet until they're about 4 foot in length, and then 6 square feet until they're about 6 feet in length. But again, it can vary.
Yeah, and that varies based on what farmers see and what that, because it's, you know, we're a very young industry, so you know, we don't have hundreds of years of data, and most alligator farmers are really close to the vest with their information. They don't want to share a whole lot, so there's a lot of trial and error that goes on.
Here's a really cool aerial photo of an outdoor alligator farm. Do you guys have any ideas, without reading the slide, why they might be curved ponds? It actually maximizes the bank area for the gators to actually bask. So they'll come up onto land, they'll bask in the sun. So this is actually a photo of a concrete building that has been used for an alligator tank. And these buildings can actually be covered, so you can put a roof that's removable on top. And then depending on what the weather is doing temperature-wise, you can put the roof on or you can remove it. And then in the photo, these gators are actually at harvestable size.
Okay, hold up. I don't think you'll ever see an alligator farm enclosure like this now, as far as raising them for their meat and their hides, because they used to, you know, we used to raise them like this, but now everything is covered because, number one, we can control the temperature better, and number two, the density here is outrageous, because the grading has gotten so much more difficult that these guys would be all over each other trying to eat, and so the water doesn't look like it's very deep. So, you know, there's a lot of things wrong with that photo as far as a grow out house. And so when we get to the video, you'll be able to see just a sample of what a grow out house, what a current grow out house looks like, and then the inside, and you know, and I'll describe that later on. So
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Alan.
Mm-hmm.
Again, depending at the time, if you have poor water management and your gators are stressed, you might see brown spot disease. Also in those areas, if you're keeping them in darker areas with very low sound, they're going to be sensitive when it's time for them to be hit with light or they hear a large sound. They can also be given antibiotics if there is any disease outbreaks. So that's just something to keep in mind for when you're trying to keep your alligators happy and healthy. It's really important to look at the water quality and see if your animals are stressed out. For gator harvesting, they are skinned only at approved sites. This is done via federal, state, and local sanitation requirements for meat processing. Each gator actually gets a tag, and that hide is then tagged, and the cartons have that tag on it as well. And they can be harvested when they're about 4 to 6 feet in size. And this is state regulated with the tags. And then for the alligator products, the meat comes from the tail. The back and belly hide is used to make your boots, your shoes, your fashionable accessories. And then the head, you might actually see them where they're mounted and for taxidermy display. We're gonna switch gears just a little bit and talk quickly about the turtle aquaculture. That way we can see Alan's videos on the gator farm. But there are 78 turtle farms as of 2013 in the US. This is a $8.6 million annual sales, and that comes from 3.5 million turtles sold. And so just in Florida, we have 26 turtle farms. And so you might be wondering what kinds of turtles we're actually producing here in Florida, and that's sliders, soft shells, cooters, and snapping turtles. And I have a couple photos in the next slide of them. And so Florida's industry in 2013 had $3 million in sales just from turtles. And then that's 800,000 whole turtles. And these turtles produced a total of 1 million total eggs. And so the reason we're producing these turtles is because there's a large export, and China is actually purchases a majority of the turtles we produce here in the US. You did? Oh, that's interesting. So for the turtles, they actually nest in late March, and they can go into summer nesting wise, and then eggs are collected daily. They're actually washed with chlorine and dipped in antibiotics, and this is to prevent salmonella infection. So you might be wondering, like, why is it sometimes hard to get turtles as pets depending on what state you're in? It is regulated because of salmonella outbreaks. So usually if you're handling turtles or even reptiles in general, you might want to wash your hands because of salmonella. And so pond sliders and cooters are the most common turtles farmed here in Florida. And you can actually see here's the turtle ponds. It's done on a sandy bank, and that's because of where the turtles are gonna nest. They're not rocks, those are turtles, yeah. The picture quality isn't too good, but yeah, those are all turtles. And so just like gators, sex is determined by temperature for these turtles as well. They incubate for about 60 days, and their temperature ranges from 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And in the photo, you can see the snapping turtle, the sliding turtle, and the soft shell turtle. And hatching rates are between 80 and 90%. So for conclusion, the U.S. reptile aquaculture industry is a very large industry, and it's valued, let me move this out of the way, at $71 million annually. Florida has the most turtle farms in the U.S., and it has the second most alligator farms in the nation, and that's of the 2013 census. For reptile aquaculture, it is sustainable, and it's a win-win for Florida. And so with the conclusion of the PowerPoint, we're going to swap over, if you just give me a little bit, the videos Alan has for us.
But Natalie, one of the things while you're doing that is that when we collect alligator eggs in the wild, we'll also see a lot of turtle eggs in there as well. So turtle moms are pretty smart. They'll use the mama alligator to protect their turtle eggs.
Oh, wow. That is smart. Okay.
You have any questions for Alan right now?
What he said they harvested in 60, 40, 60. Why?
All right, well, Natalie's doing her technology transfer here. So one of the questions is the harvest size for alligators was 6 feet, you said?
Yeah, between 4 and 8 feet. And that is all determined by the buyers. Most of our market is all, it's all international. Very, very few of the hides stay in the United States.
All right, this is the first video.
All right, so Natalie's going to the first video, Alan.
Okay. So you can see, you know, we use an exceptionally large helicopter this year because we normally use an R44. This is a Jet Ranger, but you can see there's little holes in there, and that's a nest right there. And they just open it up, and so that gives you a good example of how big the nest is. And of course, mama's coming out. They're marking the eggs. That was a very large nest.
So what happened to the rejected mother?
Nothing. She stayed right there. We generally what we'll do. So what's happening here is we're taking the eggs back to the pontoon boat, and then they'll go ahead and go back for the next nest. And so we do this all day long. We have 3 airboats, and we're constantly collecting. We'll collect for between 6 to 8, 9 hours a day, each day. And once we start to collect, we open, once we open the nest, we take 100% of the eggs out. As far as the mama goes, she is, she's going to still stay there and protect that nest. She sees that we pulled the eggs out, but she's still going to stay there. The same things that happens, the raccoons will come and get into the nest. That's one of our biggest nemesis on the collection is trying to beat the raccoons to the nest. So Any other questions about that process?
I'm gonna prepare to swap them over if they have any questions.
Okay. All right. So you see, she'll stay in that little water area there, and will just with her head right above the water, and then she'll hide back there, and she'll come out and she'll attack you. A lot of, probably more than half of the nest we get mamas on the nest that are protecting, but some are aggressive, some are not so aggressive. So what's happening here is when we get the eggs, we renest them, and you see we've got the mark there on top, and so we use sphagnum moss because we can control the humidity better in the nest that way. And this is our incubator. We pack them in the cardboard boxes there. Those are wax boxes, and then we'll re-nest them in these plastic trays, and then here you can see a baby hatching out. So so the reason we will re-nest them is we want to be able to control the humidity and the temperature. And there's the grow out houses that, they're round, and then you'll see when he gets ready to, so the density there is pretty good for that size alligator. Just throwing some food in there, and that's a floating pelletized food. And we throw it around instead of putting it in one spot. You don't get them all going up and fighting that way. For years, we used to grind food up, and we would put it along the edge, and they'd kind of butt their way up there, and they would bite each other. And we ran into a lot of scarring. By having the floating food, it makes it so much easier to cut down on the scarring. So this incubator, we've got about 4,000 eggs in the incubator there. And like I said, last year I had a very good hatch rate. We ended up with about a 92% hatch rate, which was one of the best years that I've had. And all of these houses here, they have the heating comes from the floor. There's poly tubes that go underneath. It's just like it's radiant floor heating. We use solar, and also we have a heat pump as a backup. We have a water storage tank, and at this point we're not recycling. That's one of the things that we need to do, or eventually we'll get to. What'll happen is, as the bigger fashion houses buy from farms, and we're considered a small farm at 800 to 1,000 hides a year, but some of the ones that are producing 20, 30, 40,000 skins, they're wanting to recycle the water. They have people coming in, they're analyzing their carbon footprint, and it's becoming more and more difficult for a mom and pop operator to get in and stay into that business. So what we've done is we've sought out small manufacturers locally. When I say locally, I'm talking about domestically, where we can sell 10, 15, 20 hides at a time to a manufacturer, and they will take and make products and sell them in their boutiques or wherever. So just have to kind of move with the times. We can't keep up with the big boys. We got to find another playground.
All right, before we move on to the next video, any questions about that? How do you judge an alligator size by just looking at the head?
You can pretty much tell, go from the snout, from the nostrils on the snout to the middle of the eyes. If you can estimate the number of inches there, that's about how long in feet the alligator is. So if say it's 3 inches, it's going to be 3 feet long.
So,
which is,
oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, which is important for some people to know, especially as a nuisance alligator trapper. They'll tell me they have a 3-foot alligator, and you go out there and he's 8 or 9 feet long, and you're not expecting that. But so yeah, that's a good question.
So your grow out facility or tank is pretty distinctive in design. What's the roof made of? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we've had several different roof designs, and that's a spray foam. And basically what we did was we I framed it up and I used shade cloth, and then I contracted with a guy to come and spray it. And it was kind of amazing because he sprayed the top, and as he was spraying, and it's a rough, he didn't have the right tip on it because you can see how rough that is. It's not smooth, and I was looking for the smooth part. And so what he did was he would spray that, and it dried fast enough. Within 10 minutes, he was able to walk on it. And then he went on the underside and sprayed that too. So we've got 6 inches of insulation there, which will really keep the heat in. And so it's cut down between that and our going solar on just those 9 houses there. We were when we were buying propane, we were spending between $2,300 and $2,500 a month on those 9 houses, and we've cut that down to 0 now, and all by going solar. Our electricity's gone up a little bit, but not near where we were with the propane.
And what is your water supply source?
We have an artesian well, and we pump out of that, and then we have a reservoir behind there that it's about 3/4 of an acre, and it just goes back into the ground. So.
Well, we're missing pictures of GatorRama. I wanted to see the gators jumping and getting the bait.
I didn't do that. I didn't know that, but
I'm just
you know,
kidding.
one of the things, because I will plug GatorRama though, because we're coming into an area in a time of the year now where it's really a lot of fun. Because number one, I should tell you that we have the most hands-on experience, most hands-on operation probably in the country when it comes to alligators, where you can go into a pool and you can catch up baby alligators. We have what we call barebacking. You can sit on the back of an alligator, 6 to 8 foot, 9 foot alligator. We have something new called face to face, where you come within a couple of feet of a 9, 10, 11, 12 foot alligator. We have our fast hands, no hands challenge, where you can feed the big alligators jumping up out of the water. Yeah, there's about 7 or 8 different opportunities for you to get up close and personal with alligators, and no one else offers that. You know, we've cleared all this with our insurance company, and and we have waivers to sign your life away, and we always collect the car keys when you come in. So if you don't make it, we've got to be able to move the car.
In fact, do you want to hold up your hands and show some of the evidence of being a gator farmer?
Yeah, that's that happened about 15 years ago, 16. It was 2002, 2003. It was actually a crocodile bite that did that, and but now I've got my real own life personal crocodile story.
So now that we've finished up, maybe this might be a good time to see if you can go down and see if those gators are hatching.
Ooh, I may have to, let's see. Will I be able to close this out and then open it up again?
Yes.
Okay, so let me do that.
Yeah,
All right.
all you have to do is click on that link again and you'll come right back.
Okay, so give me 5 minutes.
No,
Okay.
you're fine. Thank you.
All right.
We're gonna see if he's able to come on, because if he is, he's gonna show live video of the gator freezer tanks that they have and baby gators.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go down to the incubator. Is it unlocked?
If it's not clear, it's keep you down there. I just got the vet paperwork and search.
Yeah, we're gonna see. I'm gonna see how long this will work.
Okay.
See.
So far, we're still connected, so. try and do the interactive video to get the videos prior because of internet.
Okay, so here you can see.
Hold on, we can't see anything. Here we are.
You can't see anything.
That walkway, I think, is part of GatorRama, the whole attraction area.
He has very bad signal, just like the others.
Well, he's out there on the
Yeah.
Southwest Central.
Yeah, we lost him completely. That's a bummer.
Is that his office?
No, this is us.
Oh, this is.
Yeah, this is us. He might come back. He has to relog on. We completely disconnected from him. Yeah, I knew that was gonna happen, so that's why I was like, let's hold that till the very end.
Two shadows.
Well, that's because it's showing what I'm seeing here, so I don't get two shadows here. That's nothing. There's one's Tall Island. Oops, maybe lost him.
Thursday's off.
Hey, Alan, we lost you.
There we go. Cruise for a week. Basically,
Oh, okay.
that's like extra $200.
Okay, thank you. All right, bye. He said he's walking over to the incubator
He
now.
said he's got a lot better than that.
Yeah.
I was driving home from there was still a sleep in that truck.
Oh,
Yes. It's driving. They want to take a truck on a certain lane. They love
Hi, Alan. We see you now. I can't. You are muted, so you know, Alan. We can't hear you. Let me see.
So,
All right. Hi, Alan. We can hear you now.
okay. So, all right. So here's an albino alligator. There's only about 90 of these in the world. Not very many. So, but I was going to show you real quick here. You can see this. This is a tray. You can see this guy here's coming out. Let's see if I can get around there. Where is he? Right here. So, you can hear the. Got to find the camera. See, there he is. Good morning. So you can see they're not very big. got a clutch here. Some of these guys are coming out. I should have hold that for a second.
They're ready to eat, aren't they? I mean, not frosty. They want to eat. They're ready to start eating, right? And not frosty, but
no, not really. So you see this guy here still partially in the egg, so he could stay in there for up to 24 hours or so, and then we'll help him get the rest of the way out. But one of the things I want to show you is you see how their belly is here. It's kind of bloated there. They're still living off the yolk sac, and so they won't need to eat for another 5 to 7 days, and then that's when we'll start to feed them. So let's see. So you see this guy here's coming on out, and so there's and these things they're all under there, and I'm not going to mess with them too much. I'm just going to I was hoping to be able to see y'all, but we've got several clutches that are started. Well, I'll say several. We got a few that are started. These here are some eggs off of private wetlands. They're not. Some of these aren't ready yet, but everything is inventoried. Everything. I know exactly which lake they came from, and and then what we'll do is you can see here, I've got water on the floor, so they'll stay on the floor for a couple of days, and then we'll move them down into a grow out house, and then we'll start feeding them in about a week, 4, 5, 6 days. So that's pretty much it. I don't know if there's anything else I can tell you. I do want to step out of the incubator because it's hot in here. So. Okay. So does anybody have any more questions for me? I don't know what else to tell you.
well, I think they're ready to eat some gator meat. But we're having pizza for lunch here. So
Pizza, yeah. Well, if y'all would have come down here, I would have served you gator tail.
I was also telling them about the gator ribs that you serve frequently too.
Right. Yeah. We do both the gator ribs and the gator tail. We're very fortunate that we're able to sell our gator tail at a retail price instead of a wholesale price. So we sell the gator tail at about $18 to $20 a pound, and retail it goes for about $8, $9 a pound.
All right. I really appreciated your time, your tour. It was really good and fascinating. Guys, you want to say thank you?
Thank you. It was nice talking with you guys, and good luck. Enjoy the last week of your summer, right?
Thank you, Alan.
Okay. Bye-bye. Good job, Natalie. You did a great job.
Thank you.